All right, lift off and the clock has started.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
And liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
This is The Space Shot, episode 382, and I'm John Molnix. Earlier today, SpaceX kicked off their year with the final flight of the Iridium Next satellites. In addition to that last Iridium flight, the Iridium 8 mission, there's been a lot of chatter online after Elon Musk shared the image of the completed Starship Hopper, which should be beginning test flights sometime this spring. One last little piece of SpaceX news before we get to the interview. The commercial crew demo for the Falcon 9 and Dragon capsule has been pushed back due to the government shutdown here in the United States. As more details become available, I'll be sure to share them. I'm going to have some more SpaceX content here soon in an upcoming episode. For today's episode, I spoke with Lois Huneycutt, one of the administrators of the Space Hipsters Facebook group. We were talking about the book prize that the Space Hipsters started last year. For tonight's episode, we did have to record via telephone, so apologies that the audio is not exactly up to par for what we're used to. Without any further delay, let's jump into the interview. Today I'm talking with Lois Huneycutt. We're going to be discussing the Space Hipsters Book Prize, which if you're a member of the Space Hipsters Facebook group, you're going to know all about that. Lois, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be here.
So talk to me a little bit. Where did the origin of the book prize come from? When did it start?
Oh, this year is our second year. Our inaugural year was last year. And what happened is, honestly, a few of us were sitting around talking at one of our events, and I happen to be, my day job is being a medieval historian, and I sit on several book prize committees in my day job for history competitions, and it kind of came out in this conversation that there really was no way of honoring or recognizing really great work done in the field of space flight or space history. There's there are prizes for science fiction and there are prizes for children's book writing and in science, but there really wasn't anything that recognized really good work in space history or space exploration. And we have a lot of people in our group, as you know, John, that are just really big names and have done some excellent work. And we kind of thought, well, who could do that? And then we thought, well, why don't we do it? Why don't we try it? And so we did a little juggling of the books and realized we had some money that we could use as a prize incentive. And, just started last year. Last year was our first year. We got 17 nominations, narrowed it down to 5 within a relatively short period of time, and then spent about 2 months trying to come up with the book that did win. So this year we're doing it all over again.
So what kind of goes into that process? I mean, there's judges, obviously, but then what are some of the criteria that you use?
Well, we do have judges. We have a panel of judges. Over half of our judges have been book authors themselves in any given year. That's kind of built into our guidelines, so they know what goes into producing a really good book. But what we're really looking for is a book that is obviously going to be technically really good. It's going to tell a story that maybe we don't know, that hasn't been told yet. And it's going to do it in a way that engages both dedicated space flight fans and maybe the general public. I mean, it's going to be an outstanding book. And so last year's book was Scott Kelly's book. We just really felt like it just hit all the right buttons, and we were really excited about giving him the award. And this year, we are almost at the end of the nomination process, and I think we have 9 nominees this year, slightly fewer, but I'm really excited about the book that we do have nominated. It's going to be a hard choice this year.
Yeah, no, I've read Endurance, and my mom got it for me last Christmas. And she let me open it a little bit early. So thankfully I got a little head start on it. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned the background of some of them. So it's not just, random people. There's some serious, and nobody in the Space Hipsters group is really random, but everybody's really into space flight and very interested in, space history and that type of stuff.
Sure. As I said, we have a largish panel of judges because we do want our books read by at least 4 or 5 people.
Okay.
And we have, I think, 9 judges this year, and that over half of them, as I said, have produced books themselves. Some of them have produced more than one book. I mean, that you would recognize their names right away. The rest of them are involved in the spaceflight community in one way or another as public historians, museum professionals, journalists. I mean, people that have had, people that have had a lot of experience in the community, and they're also responsible for our judges can also nominate, and our judges recruit nominations. I mean, ask people to nominate. So, we really are looking for the cream of the crop with those books.
So, I mean, you get to read a lot of cool books then for this specifically.
Right, and I am not, and I should make it clear, none of the Space Hipsters, moderators, administrators, none of the, the kind of crew, the board of Space Hipsters is a judge. That we do recruit outside judges. Okay. But I have the cool job of being the person that kind of babysits the process. Okay. I make sure that I put out the announcements, I do the publicity, and then I make sure that the judges are talking to each other, and I make sure that the judges get copies of all the books they need and things like that. So it's a really privilege for me to be able to sort of sit in on the discussions and conversations of these really smart and experienced people as they encounter and discuss these works among themselves. We have 9 books, and I have read 4 of them so far. Okay. And we'll probably read, we often get a couple, often it's only the second time, but last year we did get 3 or 4 nominations right at the very end. And I kind of hope that we pull in a few. Our deadline's January 15th. So we can pull in a few more. We have maybe a dozen books by the end, and I probably will read them all over the course of the judging period. And so, it really is nice to be. I want to read them anyway, but there is that sort of incentive to say, while we're discussing these, I should read this so that when I make the presentation, or whoever makes the presentation this year, that I can actually talk knowledgeably about the field of books that we were looking at.
Well, it's a good excuse to read a book. Not that you really need an excuse, but...
Right, yeah.
Do you have any favorites that have... Oh, go ahead.
Well, you know what? I probably shouldn't talk about favorites. Because I don't want to influence anybody judging or reading. I will say that some of the books come through and they are so beautifully illustrated that they are just works of art. And one came over my across my desk right about Christmas time, and I immediately ordered 3 copies for Christmas.
Oh, wow!
Because they were, it was such a beautiful book, and I could just see so many people enjoying it. So, and we do all the books that are nominated. By the time we decide to accept a nomination, and honestly, there have been 1 or 2 times where we decided not to accept a nomination, just didn't fit the criteria properly. But once we accept a nomination, we do a lot of amplifying of that book through social media. I put out Twitter blurbs on each book that's nominated, and also on our Facebook page. And so I just feel like that's one thing that in the spaceflight community that we can do, is that we can bring these books to people's attention and get buzz going about them, so that even if they're not the one chosen as the winner, maybe we sell a couple of dozen copies for an author, and that's important.
Yeah, well, and public engagement for the space community is critical. So it's good to know that that's part of the goal of the book prize is generating more public awareness inside and outside of the spaceflight community.
Yeah, and bringing new people in is really always fun when that happens, when someone discovers a new passion or something. So, and
Exactly.
my passion for spaceflight honestly came from books. Myself, I went to the Astronaut Hall of Fame and was intrigued by some of the things that I was reading, and also at the little presentation plaques of the astronauts. Went to their bookstore and bought, I think, 3 biographies that day and read them all, and I was hooked.
That's a good way to get hooked. The biographies, it gives you, sometimes it can be a little bit biased, depending on who the biographer is, but it gives you such a cool insight into the people that, we hear a ton about the missions. Everybody loves to talk about the rockets, but the people behind space flight, there's just so many stories that we still haven't even heard yet. So it's exciting to know that there's new books coming out each year that cover aspects of history that haven't been touched on yet.
Yeah, right. I mean, we still have a few Apollo astronauts whose stories haven't been told, and now a lot of the shuttle people are writing, and that's really nice. One of the books that's nominated this year is representative of something that I see as more and more of a trend in space writing, is looking at the people behind the scenes, and that's the biography of George Abbey. I think that was the first or second book that was nominated this year, and I have not read that one yet. I've just ordered my own copy, but that's one that I want to read, and it really is going to give us a lot of insight to how it happened without it being, you pointed out that some of the books are a little biased, that it's really easy to write a kind of hagiography, and make these people into these flawless heroes and things like that. The best books, of course, don't do that. The best books give us more well-rounded looks at people. It's just great to see this happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, space flight and space exploration, it's a human story. So the fact that we're getting more of these human stories is, I think really refreshing. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are reading a lot of those.
Yeah, a lot of that, and last year one of my favorite books. It didn't win, but it ended up being just really thought-provoking for me. Was a book on the efforts to preserve the sites that and places that are associated with the early days of space flight. It's called The Final Mission. And it was really about, and as a historian, of course, maybe I was drawn to that book in particular. But ongoing efforts to do that kind of work, and so it's so multifaceted. It's just fascinating to see the different directions. We've got a couple of books this year that are nominated that talk about our unmanned program. There's a Alan Stern's book on the New Horizons. Is among the nominees, and so there's something for everybody in that cohort of books.
For sure, that book is on my reading list as well. So,
okay, yes.
I go shopping and I always add books. I'm like, I got to read these first though, and then I end up buying more books. So.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the one downside of being involved in the book prize is that, if I have 9 books or 12 books to read for the 2018 crop, there's a few that have been sitting on my desk for a while that I really want to read, but I can't get to, and so they're 2015 books or 2016 books that before the prize started that I've got to work them in. I got to get them read, but I hope to before Space Fest.
Well, yeah, it was Space Fest, and it's Space Fest 10, and it's in August, right?
That's in August this year. But, yeah, I should say that our book prize is always going to be, it's always, again, we only have 2 years into it. It sounds a little pretentious to say always. But our plan is that our book prize will be announced during the Space Hipsters field trip.
Okay.
And the Space Hipsters field trip is just a independent thing that we do the last weekend in April of the year. And this year it will be at the Neil Armstrong Museum in Ohio, the last Saturday in April. I think it's the 26th, maybe the 27th. I don't have a calendar in front of me right now. And so that's when we announced the previous year's book prize.
Okay.
So the nominations close on January 15th, and then I start nagging the judges to start narrowing the field. That becomes my job, until we decide, until we decide on the book. So
that sounds good.
It'll be really exciting. And, our very first field trip was at the Cosmosphere. That was the inaugural Space Hipsters field trip.
That was a while ago, right?
It was, I think, 4 years ago.
Okay.
It was, I think, 2015 was our first field trip, and it worked really well. And the Cosmosphere, had its usual hospitality, and
they're
it was
great.
a really good kickoff for it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna get this episode out before the book nominations close. My goal, I'm actually going to try to get it out here tonight. We're recording on Friday. So if you're not a member of the Space Hipsters group and it sounds like something you're interested in, go to Facebook, just search Space Hipsters, and you have to request to join, which I do appreciate how the group is moderated. It's quite nice. And then there'll be a link. You posted a document that you can nominate on. Is that right?
It's on our announcement section, and it's a very top announcement right now. And it has the nomination form. My email, it's HistorianMom@gmail.com. And you can, if for some reason the form doesn't work for you, you can't get it down, can't do it, whatever, just pop me an email and give me the details on the book, and we can talk, and I'll fill out the form myself. So,
okay, cool.
Yes, and it's the only requirement. It's nonfiction for the adult market, published in 2018. And that's it.
Well, Lois, thank you for coming on and talking about this book prize. I look forward to having you on again in the future.
Okay, we'll see you soon, John.
It was great to be able to have Lois on the podcast to talk about the Space Hipsters book prize tonight. If you're not a member of the Space Hipsters Facebook group, you can still nominate an author or a book. I'll be sharing the link to Lois's email in the show notes in case you want to nominate somebody without having to go on Facebook to do so. Thanks for listening today. I'm going to have more information on the Patreon page in the next episode. I wanted to make sure I could get the Space Hipsters Book Prize interview entered into the podcast feed before nominations close for that prize. The Patreon page is going to help me be able to cover expenses related to hosting for the podcast, the Adobe Creative Cloud charges, and all of the other services that are utilized for the show. Details on the Patreon will be available next episode. If you're new to the podcast, I would appreciate it if you could subscribe and leave a review. More reviews help more people find out about the show, and I'd appreciate it if you could help me spread the word. Until next time, I'm John Molnix, and I'll catch you on the flip side.